So I hope you guys don't get lost in my little diagram that I've drawn here for Weir's diagram. This is the best that it's gonna get, so just deal with it. Haha. Basically, there's three main things I want to talk about as far as Weger's diagram. Down here we have ECG, here we have ventricular volume, and here we have pressure changes. So as far as relating muscle contraction to depolarization and pressure, and I even think that we should include volume because it is super important as far as where we're going to get to later with arthrosclerosis. So here we're going to start with atrial depolarization, or we're going to start with depolarization in general, and then we're going to talk about contraction. So down here, this is contraction, contraction. Two different contractions, but still contraction. Depolarization of the atriums and depolarization of the ventricles. In other words, contraction atrium, contraction ventricle. When we contract here and we contract here, we see ventricular volume takes a little bit of a jump here, and then here we see that contraction almost directly in line with drop in ventricular volume. That is because when we contract here, we're contracting the ventricles, we're contracting the bottom, we're doing bundle of His, bundle branches, Purkinje fibers, all that type of stuff at the bottom in order to push that blood up and out. When that blood finally is pushed, it goes out. Here we see the out. As far as pressure goes, we are going to have ventricular pressure here, this black line that goes up and down. We're going to have atrial pressure here, and then we're going to have aortic pressure here. So right here and right here, we're going to have valves, mitral valve, aortic valve. So when we contract here, blood leaves here. In order for that blood to leave here, we must open this, the aortic valve. In order to do that, we contract, we build pressure after this mitral valve opens in the ventricles, so much so that it is going to open this aortic valve. Once this is open, it's all game. This leaves. This is what's causing it to leave. And this is when we see this. We are going to see it fill back up. This is the aortic valve closing. This is the mitral valve closing. This is going to fill right back up once this mitral valve closes because there's no pressure here. We can't create pressure because we're not contracting and we don't have any more blood. Once we have run out of blood here, it is hard to continue to keep this valve open. So once blood is low, we close that valve. Then we close this valve. Once they're both closed, we can start to build this volume again. And since there's no contraction, we don't have to worry about pressure getting too high and it pushing out. So we can basically just start all over again from the beginning. As far as arthrosclerosis goes with all this, arthrosclerosis is when there's a plaque buildup in your lumens. So like blood vessels, they look like this. There's a little hole and then they run in a line. So this hole right here is a lumen. This is where blood passes through. This is normal. This is how blood gets through. And then when we have a plaque buildup, we turn to this. This is bad. We don't want this. We don't want this because it's hard to get any blood through this. If we're not able to get any blood through this, it's going to be hard to create pressure. It's going to be hard for us to do this to create the pressure here in order to push any of this out because we do not have the blood here. There's not enough blood being passed through the lumen to create that pressure. So that pressure, we might see with arthrosclerosis, we might see this drop, we might see this drop. We might see this drop. We might see everything drop as far as pressure goes because we're not able to build it. We don't have any blood. Our blood is being stopped up. There's no blood that is able to pass through this lumen in order to create a pressure gradient, in order to push anything out. We can't do this, we can't do this, we can't do this. We could, but it might be not to the extent that we want it to, and that's when we start to develop issues. With stuff like ACE inhibitors and beta blockers are gonna lower our heart rate. They're gonna lower our need to fill up the ventricles, if that makes any sense. So with beta blockers, we're still gonna be able to fill the ventricles, but when you're, let's say your heart rate is too high, you're not able to fill to this extent. You might be able to fill to this extent with with a beta blocker. We can slow down the heart rate in order to let this fill up to where it needs to be. So if this is down here, this pressure gradient is going to be a little bit lower because we don't have a lot of volume. This, I mean, probably would stay the same, but this here would take a little bit of a toll because we don't have a lot of blood that we're working with to create that volume, that pressure. And this would even drop a little bit because we are not able to fill our ventricles to their max extent when our heart is racing. So our beta blocker is going to lower our heart rate in order to let us be able to fill this much more. As far as ACE inhibitors, same thing, blood pressure. We want to be able to fill this up as much as possible in order to create this pressure here, in order to get to this point where we no longer have any. If we're low here, or if we're low here, we're going to be low here. And then it's going to be hard to push the same amount of blood that we are used to. And if we can't do that, we're not working at our best extent, and our cardiac output is going to drop, our way of life is going to drop. It's going to be mayhem on the heart, man. It's going to be hard to keep up with everyday life when your heart is working at 30, 40, 50, 60% of what it's supposed to be, when it should be working at 100%. This is what 100% looks like. A 50% heart might start here with the pressure gradients. A 50% heart might start here with the volume, and then we can't create this pressure. We can't push the heart. We can't push the blood out of the heart as effectively as we were able to, and we aren't able to fully fill it like we were supposed to, and refill it. So, yeah. As far as Wigger's diagram and atherosclerosis and contraction, pressure, that is all we need to know. Thank you.